Why are the people who understand the system best the same ones walking away from it? There's a pattern emerging. The hedge fund manager who made $40 million last year just moved to a cabin in Montana with no internet. The Silicon Valley engineer who built the algorithms that track your every move now grows vegetables in rural Oregon. The corporate lawyer who defended Fortune 500 companies for 2 decades is living in a van, traveling between national parks. These aren't burnout cases. These aren't failures. These are people who saw behind the curtain and decided the price of staying was too high. And if you think this is just about stress or work-life balance, you've already missed the point. This is about something far more sinister. This is about a system that was designed very carefully to keep you trapped inside a cage you can't even see. The question isn't why they're leaving. The question is, what did they figure out that you haven't yet? Let me take you back to a specific moment in history. Picture this. It's 1946. The war is over. American soldiers are flooding back home. The factories that built tanks and bombers need something else to manufacture. The economy is about to face a catastrophe because wartime production is ending. Millions of men are returning home expecting jobs, expecting homes, expecting the American dream they were promised. But here's the problem. The industrial capacity of America has exploded during the war. The machines are ready. The assembly lines are humming. But what are they going to make? Who's going to buy it? This is where our story really begins. In the boardrooms of New York and Detroit, in the offices of advertising agencies on Madison Avenue, a question is being asked. How do you keep an economy running when people already have what they need? Because that's the terrifying truth they faced. For most of human history, people bought things because they needed them. You bought a coat because you were cold. You bought shoes because yours wore out. You bought food because you were hungry. Simple. But if everyone already has a coat, a pair of shoes, a table, a bed, then what? The machine stops. The economy collapses. The system dies. So they invented something new. They invented desire. Not need, desire. They hired psychologists. They studied Freud. They learned how to bypass your rational mind and speak directly to your insecurities, your fears, your dreams. Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, became the architect of modern propaganda. Except they didn't call it propaganda anymore. They called it public relations. They called it advertising. They called it the American way. And it worked. By the 1950s, Americans weren't buying things because they needed them. They were buying things because their neighbor had them, because the television told them they deserved them, because not having them meant you were falling behind. The economy boomed. Suburbs sprawled across the country. Every family needed a car, then 2 cars, then 3. Every home needed a television, a refrigerator, a washing machine, a lawnmower, a toaster, a vacuum cleaner, and then newer versions of all of those things. The treadmill had begun. But let's go deeper. Let's talk about what this really created, because it wasn't just about selling products. It was about rewiring the human brain. For the first time in history, your identity became tied to what you consumed. You weren't a person anymore. You were a consumer. Your worth was measured not by your character, not by your community, not by your family, but by what you owned. The car in your driveway, the watch on your wrist, the brand on your shirt. They turned you into a walking billboard for your own economic status. And here's the truly brilliant part. They made it endless. In the old days, you bought a hammer and it lasted 40 years. You bought a coat and you wore it until it fell apart. But that's not profitable. So they invented planned obsolescence. They designed products to break. They created fashion cycles so your coat from last year looks outdated this year. They built phones that slow down after 2 years. They created a culture where having last year's model makes you a loser. The finish line kept moving, and you kept running. Now let's fast forward. It's 2008. The financial system collapses. Banks that were supposed to be too big to fail are failing. The entire house of cards is tumbling down. And what happens? The government steps in. They bail out the banks. They bail out the corporations. They print trillions of dollars. And here's what nobody wants to say out loud. The system didn't break because of a few bad actors. The system broke because it was designed to break. It was built on debt. It was built on the idea that you can grow forever, that you can consume forever, that you can extract forever. And when reality caught up, when the math stopped working, they just changed the rules. The smart people started noticing something. They started asking questions. If the game is rigged, why are we still playing? If the prize is a corner office and a heart attack at 55, is that really winning? If the cost of success is your marriage, your health, your soul, what exactly are you succeeding at? There's a moment that happens. It's different for everyone, but it's always the same moment. You're sitting in your car in traffic. You've been sitting there for 40 minutes. You're going to be late, again. Your phone is buzzing with emails. Your boss wants the report. Your kids are at daycare until 6. Your spouse is working late, again. You look around at the other cars. Everyone has the same dead look in their eyes, and you think, just for a second, is this it? Is this what I'm doing with my life? And then the light turns green and you push the thought away because you have a mortgage and car payments and credit card debt and you can't afford to ask that question. But some people don't push it away. Some people sit with that question. And once you really sit with it, once you really look at it, you can't unsee it. You start noticing things. You notice that you're working 50 hours a week to pay for a house you barely live in. You're buying things you don't need with money you don't have to impress people you don't like. You're sacrificing your health, your relationships, your happiness for what? A retirement that might happen when you're 65 if you're lucky and not too sick to enjoy it? The people who were walking away figured something out. They figured out that the system requires your participation. It needs you to keep working, keep buying, keep consuming. It needs you to stay on the treadmill. Because the moment you step off, the moment you say no, the whole thing starts to fall apart. Not for everyone, but for you. And that's terrifying to the system. Because if enough people step off, if enough people walk away, the game ends. Let me tell you about a man named Diogenes. He lived in ancient Greece, around 350 years before Christ. He was a philosopher, but not the kind who wrote books and gave lectures. He lived in a barrel, literally. He owned nothing except a cloak and a wooden bowl. One day, he saw a boy drinking water from his hands and realized he didn't even need the bowl, so he threw it away. When Alexander the Great, the most powerful man in the world, came to visit him, Diogenes was lying in the sun. Alexander asked if there was anything he could do for him, any gift he wanted. Diogenes looked up and said, "Yes, move, you're blocking my sun." This story terrified people then and it terrifies people now, because Diogenes had discovered something dangerous. He discovered that power is an illusion, that status is a game, that the emperor has no clothes. Alexander could conquer the world, but he couldn't give Diogenes anything Diogenes wanted because Diogenes wanted nothing. He was untouchable. He was free. The system we live in today is designed to make sure you never become Diogenes. It's designed to fill you with wants, with needs, with fears. It tells you that you need more money, more status, more things. It tells you that happiness is just around the corner, just one more promotion away, just one more purchase away. But here's the secret they don't want you to know. The corner keeps turning. The goal keeps moving. Because if you ever arrived, if you ever felt satisfied, you'd stop playing. And they can't let that happen. The 1950s weren't just about creating consumers. They were about creating a specific type of person. Obedient, predictable, anxious, The suburbs weren't designed for community. They were designed to isolate you, to put you in a box with a yard and a fence so you'd focus on your own little kingdom and stop asking bigger questions. The television wasn't just entertainment. It was a delivery system for desires. 30 minutes of programming interrupted by messages telling you what you're missing, what you need, what you should be afraid of. And it worked beyond anyone's wildest dreams. By the 1960s, Americans were the richest people in human history, and also the most medicated, the most divorced, the most anxious. The suicide rates were climbing. The prescriptions for tranquilizers were skyrocketing. People had everything and felt nothing. The emptiness was real. But instead of questioning the system, they were told the problem was them. You're depressed? Take a pill. Your marriage is failing? See a therapist. Your kids are acting out? More discipline. Never, ever question whether the whole structure might be the problem. Now let's talk about debt, because debt is the chains that keep you locked in. The average American household carries over $90,000 in debt. Student loans, mortgage, car payments, credit cards, medical bills. This isn't an accident. This is design. Because a person with debt is a person who can't quit. A person with a mortgage can't walk away from a job they hate. A person with car payments can't take 6 months off to figure out what they really want. Debt is control. Debt is a cage, and the system knows this. The student loan crisis is particularly cruel. We told an entire generation that they needed a college degree to succeed. We told them to follow their dreams. We told them education was an investment. So they borrowed $30,000, $60,000, $100,000, and then they graduated into an economy where the jobs don't exist or don't pay enough to cover the loans. So now they're stuck. They're working jobs they hate to pay off debt for an education that didn't deliver what it promised, and they can't declare bankruptcy. Student loans follow you to the grave. It's indentured servitude with better branding. Here's what the smart people realized. The system is not broken. The system is working exactly as designed. It's supposed to keep you running. It's supposed to keep you anxious. It's supposed to keep you wanting more. Because a satisfied person is not a productive consumer. A content person doesn't buy things to fill the void. A happy person doesn't need the next hit of dopamine from a purchase. So the system has to keep you hungry, keep you insecure, keep you afraid. And it does this through a million tiny mechanisms you don't even notice. Social media is the latest evolution. It's the most efficient desire creation machine ever invented. You scroll through your feed and you see everyone else's highlight reel, their vacation, their new car, their perfect relationship, their success, and you feel inadequate. You feel like you're falling behind. So what do? You buy something. You post something. You try to keep up. The treadmill just got faster. The cage just got smaller. And the bars are invisible because they're made of comparison and envy and fear of missing out. The people who are walking away saw this. They saw that winning the game still means you're playing the game, and the game is rigged. So they did something radical. They stopped playing. They liquidated. They downsized. They simplified. They cut their expenses to almost nothing so they could cut their income to almost nothing so they could cut their time working to almost nothing. They traded the corner office for a garden. They traded the luxury car for a bicycle. They traded the McMansion for a tiny house or a van or a cabin in the woods. And here's what they discovered. Freedom isn't expensive. Prison is expensive. The life you think you want, the life you've been sold, costs everything. Your time, your health, your relationships, your peace of mind. But the life you might actually want, the life that might actually make you happy, costs almost nothing. Because happiness doesn't come from things. It comes from time. Time to think. time to create, time to connect, time to just be. There's a calculation you can do. It's simple, but most people never do it. Take your annual income. Divide it by the number of hours you work in a year. Include commute time. Include time thinking about work. Include time checking email at night. Include time being stressed about work. Now look at that number. That's what an hour of your life is worth. Now look at the things you buy. That shirt cost you 4 hours of your life. That car cost you 2,000 hours of your life. That vacation cost you 200 hours of your life. Suddenly, the math changes. Suddenly, you're not buying things with money. You're buying things with your life. And life is the only thing you can't get more of. The people walking away did this math. They realized they were trading their lives for things that didn't make them happy. So they stopped. They asked a different question. Not, how do I make more money? But how do I need less money? Not how do I climb the ladder? But do I even want to be on this ladder? Not how do I succeed in the system? But do I want to participate in the system at all? This is where it gets philosophical. Because what they're really doing is rejecting the social contract. The unspoken agreement that says, you go to school, get a job, buy a house, have kids, work for 40 years, retire, and die. They're saying no. They're saying that contract was written by people who benefit from your compliance. They're saying maybe there's another way. And there is. It's been there the whole time. It's the way humans lived for most of history. In communities, growing food, making things, helping each other. Not isolated in suburban boxes, staring at screens, working jobs that don't matter, buying things that don't last. The modern world is an aberration. It's a 70-year experiment that's failing. And the people who see that are getting out before the crash. But here's the hard part. Walking away is terrifying because the system has conditioned you to fear it. What about health insurance? What about retirement? What about your career? What will people think? These questions are weapons. They're designed to keep you in line. Because the truth is, most of those fears are illusions. Health insurance is important, but you can get it without a corporate job. Retirement is important, but the average American retires with less than $100,000 saved anyway. Your career is important, but only if it's leading somewhere you actually want to go. And what people think doesn't matter because most people are too busy worrying about what you think of them. The people who walked away aren't reckless. They're calculated. They saved money first. They learned skills. They built alternatives. They didn't just quit their jobs and hope for the best. They planned their escape. Some of them saved 50% of their income for 5 years so they could retire at 35. Some of them learned to grow food so they wouldn't need grocery stores. Some of them built businesses that could run with minimal input so they could work 10 hours a week instead of 60. They didn't reject responsibility. They rejected the false choice between soul-crushing work and poverty. And here's what nobody talks about. They're happier. Measurably, significantly happier. Because happiness research is very clear. Once you have enough money to meet basic needs, more money doesn't make you happier, but more time does. Better relationships do. Better health does. A sense of purpose does. And all of those things require you to step off the treadmill. You can't build deep relationships when you're working 60 hours a week. You can't be healthy when you're stressed all the time. You can't find purpose when you're too exhausted to think. The system doesn't want you to know this. The system needs you to believe that more is always better, that success means climbing higher, that winning means having more than the next person. Because if you ever realize that enough is enough, that satisfaction is possible, that peace is within reach, you'd stop participating. And the machine needs your participation. It needs your labor. It needs your consumption. It needs your anxiety. Without it, the whole thing collapses. So the smartest people are walking away. not because they failed, because they succeeded. They succeeded at seeing through the illusion. They succeeded at asking the right questions. They succeeded at valuing their lives more than their lifestyles. And they're not coming back. Because once you see the cage, you can't unsee it. Once you taste freedom, you can't go back to slavery, even comfortable slavery, even well-paid slavery. This isn't a movement yet. It's too early. Most people are still asleep, still running, still believing the promises, but it's growing. Every year, more people wake up. More people do the math. More people realize they're trading everything that matters for nothing that lasts. And when enough people walk away, when the trickle becomes a flood, the system will have to change. Because it can't function without willing participants. It can't survive without people who believe in it. The question is, when will you see it? When will you stop long enough to ask if this is really what you want? When will you do the math and realize you're spending your life on things that don't matter? When will you decide that freedom is worth more than status, that time is worth more than money, that being alive is worth more than merely existing? The people who walked away aren't special. They're not braver or smarter or luckier. They just asked a question, a simple question. Is this it? And they didn't like the answer. So they changed it. And so can you.